Hey everyone, so today we're working on finishing up our goat pen. So the fence we have now is something we just put up quick temporarily when we bought them. We weren't sure exactly how we wanted to set up for them, but we just needed to get something up. So they've been living in this during the day in one of our horse trailers at night for the time being. But yesterday we got a barn moved over here for them. So what we're doing now is moving this fence line to the other corner of the barn. That way this strip in front of it is fenced in. So I'm going to start with undoing the metal clips that are holding this fence line to the T-post, and we're going to move this whole thing over and add one panel across the front. So these little metal clips were a pain to put on, so I'm sure they're going to be a pain to take back off again now. Fence completely taken down, and we strung a line from the shed to our corner. That way we can put our new posts in a straight line. So all our T-posts are in and our fence is temporarily zip tied to them. So now I'm going to use the metal T-post clips to permanently attach it to them. I'm using to put the electric on the outside of their fence is just a 5-inch T-post insulator. So this holds the wire out away from their fence. That way if a predator were to try to jump up on it or climb over it, it should stop them and give them a shock if they were to try to go up their fence. So one of the things with these insulators with having the cattle panels on the T-post is you can't always line the insulators up exactly on the same part of the T-post. Where the wire crosses, you have to find a spot that you can wrap it completely around the T-post. So it won't be the perfectly straight fence, but it'll do the job of deterring predators from climbing their fence. So the next day I ran out of time last night to finish up their fence. So before I run the electric wire on the insulators I put up, I'm going to line their fence with this welded wire. It has 2-inch by 4-inch squares. All the tractor supplies around us were out of the smaller squared metal panels, so I had to go with the cattle panels, which a baby goat could fit through. So I'm lining it with this smaller mesh fencing. All I'm doing to attach this is using zip ties. So I'm going to run the whole strip of it and go through and just zip tie the top to start, since we're not on an even surface. So now that I have it stretched out down one side of their pen, I'm going to go through and add a bunch of zip ties to secure it tightly to their panel fencing. So since this is just to make the hole smaller, it's not actually holding them in, zip ties will be plenty to connect it to the other fence. If they climb on it or rub on it, the panel on the inside will help support it. So this section here is right by the gate. This is going to be where they're climbing on and rubbing on the most, so I'm going to make sure I have plenty of zip ties to support this area. The other sections they don't really climb on or bother with, so I won't need quite as many, but right through here it's definitely going to need the most support holding it to the other fence. Hi. So I just got the back side along the garden unrolled and tacked up, and the far side unrolled and tacked up. So now I'm going to go through and put the rest of my zip ties on, and then I'll go through and trim them all, and the smaller hold wire will be done. Great, so my fence is all zip tied on, so I'm going to go through and trim all the little tails of the zip ties that are sticking out. May have gone a little overboard with how many zip ties I used. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but this cheap welded wire fencing really isn't that sturdy, so I wanted to make sure if they climb on it, it doesn't just pop right off of the cattle panels. So to hold the welded wire to the sides of their barn, I'm just taking a piece of scrap wood and screwing it to the barn with the wire in between it. That way it'll hold it nice and tight to the side of the barn and there won't be any spaces for anyone to squeeze out. Alright, so I have my boards up on each side of the shed. So that makes the end nice and secure. I still have to grab a pair of wire cutters and trim off the excess of the roll, but that is all set otherwise. So now that my welded wire is all attached to my cattle panels, I'm going to add the strand of electric. So this is just galvanized electric fence wire, and I'm going to just run it down my row of insulators. So I have my first row of wire strung. I have it pulled nice and tight, and I'm leaving a loop here because I'm going to bring the gate for the garden across and it's going to hook onto here. So these are all going to be attached to one electric box. So I want to make sure that they have a good connection to each other so the current will travel through to this piece. So I'm just going to wrap this so that it stays nice and tight. So for the goat pen, I'm using just regular hot wire. For the garden, I used electric rope. So this is a rope with electric wire braided in. So this is good for something like this where if an animal's running through, you want it to see it, but this doesn't give as strong of a shock as the regular hot wire does. So this, if you were to brush by it, you could potentially just brush the rope and not hit the wires. But this being one solid metal wire, if you brush even just against it, you're definitely going to get a good shock from it. So to be able to run my electric wire up the back side of this fence, I need to go around the back side of the shed. So I'm just going to hammer a couple insulators onto the shed and run a wire around the outer edge of it. That way I can connect this section of fence to the rest of it. Alright, so I'm almost done. I have my welded wire on my cattle panels, that way it closes up the big holes of the panels, that way when we do have kids they can't fit through. I have my electric wire ran at the top of my fence to help prevent predators from getting over. So now I'm going to set up the fence charger that'll charge that electric wire. So what I'm using, this is a solar electric box, so this doesn't need to be plugged in or anything, it just charges a battery off of a solar panel. And I'm going to mount it right on this wooden post that's next to our garden fence, because everything is going to tie into one fence charger. So this has a spot on the back where you can just hang it on screws. So I'm going to put 2 screws in this post and then hang it, and then we'll get it all connected up. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is put in a ground rod. So this must be an 8-foot ground rod. I'm going to put this in close to the base of the box and then attach a piece of the wire from the ground of the box to this bar. So now I'm going to hook my ground up first. So this box, you can easily tell which side is the electric for the fence and which side's the ground, because the part with the electric has the insulator on it, but a lot of newer boxes are just labeled to show you which side is which. So I'm just going to take this old piece of wire that's on here off. Bend a loop in my wire. And just loop it right in here. And then twist it on. And then just tighten this bolt that holds it onto there. So make sure it's nice and tight so it gets a good connection. And then I'm just going to wrap it onto my ground rod. Okay, so I have my ground wire hooked from the ground on the box to my ground rod. Now I'm going to hook up my wire from the actual power to my fence. Okay, so I'm going to take my piece of wire, make a loop in it, loosen up this bolt on here. And just loop it right around. And then make sure this is nice and tight so there's a good connection. And then from there I'm just going to bring it across and wrap it to my fence. So you can use just a coated wire for this, that way you don't have to worry about accidentally touching this, because this wire leading from the box to the fence will be electrified, but since this is just out on the edge of our field, I'm not really worried about it, so I'm just using a bare wire. So I have it wrapped on nice and tight, that way I make sure there's a good connection attached to my box, and we're good to go. Okay, so after a few days of working at it, the fence is finally complete. So I have the 3-foot tall welded wire attached to the cattle panels. So this has 2x4 holes and is just to cover up the big holes of the cattle panels, since we have 4 goats who are due soon. We bought them bred, so we don't know exactly when they're due. So I'm going to make sure we get this covered up in case they have babies when we're not expecting it. There's no chance of them fitting out. So then at the top of this I have the hot wire. So this is for when they're out at night or anything. There's no chance of, or a lot less of a chance of, any type of predator climbing over the fence. If they do try to climb up it or jump on it, they should get shocked by the hot wire. So now that the fence is complete, their pen is just about done. I still want to paint their barn, and we'll probably make doors, that way when they do have young babies we can lock them in at night. But that should wrap up tonight's video. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.